AITA for kicking out my boyfriend's family when he came to my house with his family to meet me and his mom asked too many questions to know if I was right for him. My name is Jenna, I'm 29 years old, and I live alone in a cozy 2-bedroom townhouse just outside Raleigh, North Carolina. I've had this place for almost 4 years now, and it's my little sanctuary. It's not fancy or huge, but it's mine. I painted the walls myself, picked out every piece of furniture over time, and even landscaped the tiny backyard with a mix of lavender and rosemary bushes. I'm a graphic designer, I freelance full-time, and I genuinely enjoy my quiet life. About 9 months ago, I met Eric. He's 31, works in software development, has a great sense of humor, treats waitstaff well, and opens doors without making it a thing. From the beginning, things just clicked between us. I wouldn't say it was love at first sight, but it was definitely like a deep, easy comfort. He was grounded, emotionally available, and genuinely sweet in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. We moved slowly, which I appreciated, especially given some of the toxic relationships I'd had in my past. I met a couple of his friends, he met a few of mine. Nothing rushed. No pressure. Everything felt balanced. But if there was one thing I knew early on, it was that his family was very close-knit. Eric mentioned that his parents had weekly dinners at their house and that his sisters lived nearby and visited constantly. He also told me that his mom, Diane, was a little intense, but meant well. I laughed when he first said that. I come from a relatively reserved family, my parents are still married, I have one younger brother who lives in Seattle, and we love each other dearly, but we've never been the type to overshare or probe into each other's lives too deeply. So when Eric asked me if I'd be willing to finally meet his family in person, I said sure. I figured it was about time. We had been together long enough that it made sense, and I was honestly looking forward to getting to know them. I imagined a dinner out at a restaurant or maybe a visit to his parents' place. But he suggested coming to my house instead. He said it would be more relaxed, and since I had mentioned liking to host, it could be low-key. I asked who would be coming. He said just a few people, his parents and maybe one of his sisters, depending on who was free. That seemed manageable. I cleaned my place, baked a lemon loaf, my go-to for first-time guests, and even bought a few extra wine glasses just in case. When the doorbell rang, I opened the door expecting 2, maybe 3 people. Instead, there were 9. 9. His parents, his 2 sisters and their husbands, a teenage cousin, and even his Aunt Carol, who, mind you, had not been mentioned at all. I just stood there, frozen, clutching my dish towel like a shield. Eric didn't even seem fazed. He just smiled and said, "Surprise, everyone came." I tried to play it cool. I ushered them in, offered drinks, and started slicing the lemon loaf like it was some kind of sacrificial offering to the gods of chaos. But inside, I was panicking. My living room was crammed. I didn't have enough chairs. Someone knocked over a candle. One of his brothers-in-law actually asked if I had any beer. I smiled through it. Then came Diane. Diane is one of those women who looks like she's always in charge. She came in with a handbag bigger than my cat and immediately made herself comfortable, sitting at the head of my dining table and treating my house like it was some kind of interview room. She started with small talk, where I was from, where I went to school. Harmless stuff. But then she leaned in. She asked how much I made in a year. I blinked, thinking I misheard, and gave a vague answer about how freelance work varies. She asked if I had any debt. I laughed awkwardly and said that was kind of personal. She asked how many serious boyfriends I'd had. I said I didn't think that was relevant. She asked whether I even wanted children and if I thought it was biologically responsible to wait much longer. Eric didn't say anything. He sat there, sipping his drink, looking increasingly like he wanted to sink into the couch. I tried to redirect the conversation. I asked his cousin about school. I complimented one of his sister's earrings. But Diane kept circling back. At one point, she turned to me with a tight smile and asked, "Do you really think you're good enough for Eric? I mean, he's very special." That was the moment I cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just very calmly. I stood up and said that I was feeling ambushed in my own home and that I didn't appreciate the interrogation. I said I had welcomed everyone into my space with kindness, but the energy was no longer respectful, and I didn't feel comfortable continuing. Then I asked everyone to leave. There was an awkward silence. Diane looked scandalized. His sisters exchanged glances. Someone muttered, "Unbelievable." But Eric stood up without a word, helped them all gather their things, and walked out with them. I stood in my doorway for a full minute afterward, trying to process what had just happened. Then I locked the door, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat down on the floor in front of my couch because I felt too overwhelmed to sit anywhere else. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, my phone has been a battleground. Diane sent me a long, scathing message saying I had disrespected their family, disrespected her, and embarrassed her in front of her children. She said I had made a scene and that a real woman would have handled it with more grace. One of Eric's sisters called me cold and overly sensitive. Another one asked if I was always this uptight and said it was probably why I'm still single at 29. Eric and I talked the next day. He said he understood where I was coming from and that it was a bit much, but he also said he wished I had just played along for a bit longer. That I could have waited until afterward to say something. That I had kind of blown it up. I asked him if he had known everyone was coming. He paused and said, kind of. Apparently, his mom invited the others without checking with him, and he didn't want to rock the boat. So let me get this straight, I invited my boyfriend and 2 of his family members over, and instead I got an unannounced crowd, a full-on interrogation, and passive-aggressive judgment, all in my own living room, and I was supposed to smile through it. I haven't blocked anyone, but I've stopped responding to the texts. Eric and I are in a bit of a limbo right now. He wants to smooth things over. He says it's not a big deal. But for me, it is a big deal. My home is sacred to me. Respect matters to me. And if someone thinks they can walk in and steamroll my boundaries while being defended by the person I'm dating, then what's to stop them from doing it again? So, am I the asshole? Update 1. After that first circus of a visit, I told myself I wouldn't make any decisions in the heat of the moment. I needed space to separate the whirlwind of emotions from the actual core issue. So I didn't blow up, I didn't block Eric, and I didn't call anyone names, though believe me, the group chat with my best friends had plenty of unfiltered commentary. Instead, I took a breath, reflected, and invited Eric out for coffee a few days later. Not just to talk. To set terms. We met at this quiet little cafe we both like, the kind with warm lighting and mismatched chairs that somehow still feel cozy. I had notes, mental and emotional. I told him I needed boundaries, not abstract, vibe-based ones, but real, spoken, respected boundaries. I explained that my home is not a community center. That having 9 people show up uninvited was not only jarring, it was a violation. I said I needed to feel safe in my own space, that ambushes were not love, and that I was not a pet project for his mother to evaluate. I even said, out loud, I need to be the mistress of my own life. I remembered it from a book I read in college, and in that moment it felt like armor. Eric listened. He didn't interrupt. He looked remorseful, a little embarrassed even. He apologized, not defensively, not robotically. He admitted that things got out of hand. He promised that it would never happen again. We even put a plan in place, any family visit, would be discussed in advance. I could say yes, or no, and no would mean no. No guilt, no passive-aggressive follow-ups, no surprise appearances. It was a relief. I walked away thinking we'd grown a little stronger, maybe even turned a corner. 2 weeks passed. Things felt normal again. We had dinner dates, watched dumb comedies on his couch, and texted throughout the day like always. Once, we even joked about the folder of interrogation his mom had unofficially whipped out. I laughed. He laughed. At least, I thought he was laughing with me. Then Saturday came. It was early, around 9 a.m., and I was living my best slow morning life. Pajamas, messy bun, no bra, oversized mug of coffee, and a half-eaten cinnamon roll I was planning to regret later. The curtains were open, birds were chirping, everything felt serene. Until the knock. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through the peephole, and my stomach immediately dropped like a stone in water. There they were. Again. Eric, his mother Diane, his father, both sisters. And this time, they had come bearing gifts. Diane was balancing a casserole dish and a pie tin. One of the sisters was holding what looked like a framed family photo. Eric was carrying a folder. Not even trying to hide it. A folder. My soul left my body. I didn't open the door. I spoke through it. I told them I was not expecting visitors, that I was not dressed, and more importantly, that this was not okay. Diane piped up immediately. I could hear her voice, falsely sweet with just a tint of superiority. She said they just wanted to stop by, bring some food, have a chat. She said she had prepared a list of questions and discussion topics, because she felt, last time we didn't get a proper chance to connect. As if we were running a town hall. I told her, through the door, that this wasn't about connection. It was about control. That showing up without warning was not endearing, it was manipulative. That she and the rest of the family were not respecting my space. She said, louder this time, that they just wanted to get closer. I told her this closeness felt like suffocation. And then, without another word, I closed the door. I didn't answer when Eric knocked again. I didn't respond to the doorbell. Eventually, I heard retreating footsteps. I stood in my hallway in my ridiculous pajama shorts, heart pounding, coffee forgotten, and I just stared at the floor. I wasn't shocked this had happened, I was shocked how fast it had happened again. After all that talk. After the agreement. After the apology. That night, Eric sent me a long, drawn-out message. He said his family was hurt. That they were just trying to accept me, to bring me into their circle. He said that, this is how it is in my family, spontaneous visits, group involvement, big emotions, no warning. That they didn't mean any harm. That I was taking it too personally. And that's when it finally clicked for me. This isn't about welcoming or love or even cultural difference. This is about control. About creating a dynamic where I'm always on the back foot, always being observed, always being tested. And worst of all, Eric isn't just standing on the sidelines. He's participating. He may not be the ringleader, but he's definitely holding the tent poles. And no matter how many times I try to explain, how many agreements we make, how many boundaries I try to draw, he will always fold under the weight of their expectations. He will always default to them. And that Eric is not ready to admit it. Update 2. About a week after the last debacle, the one where his entire family appeared at my doorstep again with casseroles and a folder like we were in some bizarre suburban cult recruitment, I got a message from Eric. This time it was short, a little more restrained, like he'd finally realized the weight of what had happened. He said he missed me. That he understood everything now. That he had done a lot of thinking, a lot of reflecting. That he wanted to see me, not to argue, not to guilt trip, not to fix things overnight, but to simply share a quiet winter evening together. Just the two of us. He specifically wrote, no surprises, just us. And I believed him. I believed him because I wanted to. Because even after all the red flags waving in my face like carnival streamers, I still remembered the person I fell for. The sweet guy who brought me homemade soup when I had the flu. Who remembered how I take my coffee. Who once spent an entire Saturday helping me assemble a bookshelf without complaining once, even when we realized halfway through that we'd installed every shelf backward. That Eric. That's who I thought I was going to see again. So I got dressed. Nothing fancy, jeans, a cozy sweater, the bottle of wine I knew he liked. I even put on perfume, despite the fact that it was freezing out and I'd be wearing a parka over everything. I was hopeful. Hesitant, but hopeful. When I pulled up to his place, the lights were on, and the windows glowed with that kind of golden warmth that makes you think of cinnamon and quiet music and second chances. I knocked, and he opened the door with a smile. For a second, it looked exactly like what I'd pictured. Until the smell hit me. Not a single dinner for two smell. Not pizza or Chinese takeout or something simple. It was layered, roast chicken, stuffing, some kind of caramelized thing, and laughter. Female laughter. Chatter, movement. I stepped inside. I don't know what I expected, but I know what I saw, his entire family. Again. His mother in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, clearly at home. His father on the couch, drink in hand. Both sisters and their husbands gathered around the coffee table playing some card game. His cousin by the window texting. And in the middle of it all, Diane. Diane with her clipboard. She turned toward me with that too wide smile and said something I didn't even register at first. Then the words landed. She asked if I had ever taken a fertility test, because, and I quote, "It's better to know sooner rather than later." I didn't feel the rage. Not right away. I felt the air vanish from the room. Like I was a balloon someone had poked a tiny hole into, and I was deflating in real time. Everything blurred around the edges. I didn't speak, I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just turned around and walked out. Eric followed me halfway to the door, calling after me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I got into my car and drove home in silence. I didn't even turn on the radio. The bottle of wine rolled around in the passenger seat the whole way back like some stupid metaphor for the evening. For days, I heard nothing. Then came another message. Another apology. He said he understood why I was angry. That he had once again, in his own words, succumbed to family pressure. That his mom had said it would just be a quick drop-in. That it wasn't supposed to be a whole thing. That she had insisted and he didn't know how to say no. The same loop. The same guilt. He asked for one more chance. Not a meeting at his house. Not at mine. This time, on neutral ground. A restaurant. Public place. No expectations. No ambushes. Just dinner. Just us. To talk. He even picked a nice place, one I liked. He swore it was just him. That he needed to talk to me face to face. I didn't say yes immediately. I waited a full day before I replied. But when I did, I told him I would come, but only if he could promise me that it would really be just the two of us. He said it would be. So I went. I arrived 10 minutes early. The hostess seated me at a small table by the window. I ordered water. I straightened the napkin in my lap twice. I watched the door. I tried not to brace for anything because I needed, this to be calm. Eric walked in right on time. And for a second, I exhaled. Until I saw who was behind him. His parents. Both sisters. Their husbands. And, because the universe is apparently run by a committee of sitcom writers, his grandmother. All in coordinated outfits. All smiling like this was the happiest day of their lives. His dad carried something tucked under his arm, and when they approached the table, I saw it. The folder. Only this time, there was a second tab. A new section. Labeled, in actual handwriting, a list of things the family thinks Jenna needs to improve about herself to be a worthy wife to Eric. I didn't say a word. I didn't wait for them to sit. I didn't touch my water. I just stood up, took my coat, and walked right past them, past the hostess, past the front door, and back into the cold. I heard Diane call my name. I heard Eric try to explain. I didn't stop. No screaming, no scenes. Update 3. After the restaurant trap, I drove home in silence. The kind of silence that isn't just quiet, but hollow. I didn't cry. I didn't scream into the void. I just sat in my parked car, gripping the steering wheel with both hands like it was the only thing tethering me to the earth. The absurdity of it all didn't even make me angry anymore. I just felt this deep, tired ache in my bones, like I'd been carrying someone else's emotional furniture for 9 months without realizing it. When I finally went inside, I called my mom. I didn't mean to. I wasn't planning to unload everything right then, but the second I heard her voice, it all came pouring out. Every detail. Every ambush. Every folder. Every silence from Eric. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then she said, with the kind of bluntness only a mother can get away with, "I think you don't need a relationship, you need a lawyer." And somehow, that was the moment I started laughing. Really laughing. Hysterically. The kind of laugh that starts in your chest and then cracks something open. That night, I went to my parents' house. It wasn't planned. It just felt necessary. I sat in the living room I grew up in, curled under the same wool blanket my grandma had crocheted, and we talked. My dad, my mom, my younger brother, and even my aunt, who's a therapist and, more importantly, the person in our family everyone turns to when things get messy. We laid it all out. No sugarcoating. No excuses. Everyone was stunned. Not just by the sheer weirdness of the repeated group interrogations, but by the fact that I had endured it 3 separate times without walking away sooner. My brother kept shaking his head like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. He asked, half joking, if Eric's family was part of some kind of cult. My dad didn't joke. He was genuinely alarmed. He said what scared him most wasn't the mother or the sisters or even the creepy pre-written improvement list, it was Eric. Eric, who stood by every time. Who let it happen. Who watched me drown and never once threw me a rope. Then my dad suggested something unexpected. He said we should have a formal meeting. Both families. Face to face. In my childhood, we used to call these family councils, the kind of gathering where hard things were said, but the goal was truth, not punishment. He said if Eric truly wanted to be in my life, he would show up. And if his family was convinced their way was the right way, they should be willing to defend it in front of people who saw through it. I didn't expect Eric to agree, but he did. Almost too quickly. Like he thought it would be a fun little roundtable where he could play mediator and patch things over. I told him flat out, if I'm interrupted, if I'm questioned, if anyone pulls out a folder, I will get up and walk out, and this time there will be no text message thread to follow. He said he understood. We scheduled it for a Sunday afternoon, at my parents' house. My mom made a pot of black tea and laid out cookies on the table, because, as she said, conflicts are easier when there are cookies. The tension in the room when they arrived was thick enough to chew. My dad opened the meeting. Calm, composed, but firm. He looked directly at Diane and asked if she understood that her behavior came across as controlling and demeaning. Diane didn't blink. She smiled, smug, confident, as if she had rehearsed her answer. She said she was simply protecting her son, that Eric was the center of their family, and that he deserved only the best. Then she turned her gaze to me and said, and I don't see Jenna rising to that level. The room froze. My brother practically jumped out of his chair. His voice didn't shake, it thundered. He said it outright, she had just called his sister unworthy, in her own home, in front of her family, and asked if she was okay with that. Diane didn't even flinch. Her husband looked away. Her daughters sat in awkward silence, arms crossed like they were at a PDA meeting and not a full-on character assassination. And Eric? He looked at the table. He didn't speak. He didn't defend me. He didn't so much as raise a hand to say, that's enough. He stared at the wood grain like he was trying to disappear into it. And that was the moment everything inside me settled. I wasn't angry. I wasn't embarrassed. I wasn't confused. I was done. I stood up, looked at all of them, and said it as clearly as I could, that this would be the last time I saw any of them. That I didn't need a family who viewed me as a project to be fixed. That I didn't need a man who let me be dissected in public and private without blinking. That I didn't need to fight for basic dignity. Eric didn't follow me this time. He didn't call out after me. He didn't explain. And that silence said everything words never had. We broke up that night. No drama. No storm. Just the clean cut of truth. I went home, lit a candle, and sat alone in my kitchen. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel tension in my chest. I felt clarity. I felt like I'd finally come back to myself. I used to think love was about chemistry and compatibility. That it was enough to laugh together, to hold hands in public, to have a good rhythm in bed. But now I understand something deeper, love is about alliance. It's about respect, about protection, about knowing your partner will hold the line when others try to cross it. It's about boundaries, and whether the person beside you helps guard them, or hands out maps to anyone trying to invade. I have no regrets. I chose myself.